good afternoon, or good evening to all, depending on your geographic location. Today's event, which focuses on the promotion of regional packaged natural coconut water standard, will be done in two parts. The first segment will be a signing ceremony of an agreement among 3 collaborating organizations, and the second segment is a technical webinar. My name is Beverly Best, and I'm the Director of External and Institutional Relations at IICA, and I am the moderator of the first segment of this event. Despite the heightened and accelerated demand for solidarity during this current period of crisis, sadly, we still witness the mentality of survival of the fittest. Notwithstanding the looming dark clouds, as depicted in this statement, I am extremely heartened to welcome you to this virtual signing ceremony, of a letter of intent among IICA and CARDI. In my view, this stands out as a beacon of hope of the practical importance of partnerships as we strive to improve coconut water quality standards in the region. In other words, all is not lost amid the proverbial rat race in today's world of multilateralism. I wish to emphasize that this agreement represents much more than the individual competencies of the 3 signatories. Might I add, it is a bold testimony of the efficacy of leveraging collaboration and cooperation among strategic partners on behalf of the beneficiary member states of CARIFORUM. Even more important is that all parties share common interests, have developed a common agenda, and are truly committed to enhancing the competitiveness of the small-scale farmers in coconut value chain in the CARIFORUM region. Ladies and gentlemen, as mentioned earlier, this event is a witness to the power of strategic partnerships to address coconut water standards in the Caribbean. Therefore, without any further ado, I will call on the various partners of this joint initiative to give some brief remarks. I will start with the key partner organizations. First, I will call on Mr. Louis Meyer, Head of Cooperation of the European Delegation in Barbados, to speak on behalf of the European Union. As we know, the EU is the funder of this initiative, which is financed under the 11th EDF program. Mr. Meyer, the floor is yours.
Thank you very, very much, Ms. Beverly Best, Director IICA, Ms. Ana Marisa Cordero Peña, Head of Agriculture, Health and Food Safety Program in IICA, Mr. Desmond John, Director CARIFORUM, Mr. Ansari Hossein CARDI, Mr. Hernan Manson from ITC, colleagues and participants in this ceremony from IICA, ITC and CARDI. A pleasant good morning, good afternoon or good evening. It is really a pleasure for me to be here today representing the European Union to mark the formal start of the collaboration between these 2 important projects funded by the European Union, the sanitary and phytosanitary measures and the coconut industry development. Halfway through their implementation, it is a timely and very welcomed collaboration. In a world where the fragmentation of aid is still a challenge, every step towards aid coordination counts. So allow me to heartily congratulate you on this positive endeavor. The EU is committed to uphold all coordination efforts and knowledge sharing to achieve our common goals more efficiently, avoiding any possible duplication in line with the principles outlined in the Paris Declaration on Aid Effectiveness. We are convinced that this synergy will help our goal of improving the livelihoods of Caribbean coconut producers, providing them with the new market opportunities and a more sustainable coconut production. Besides, it will also benefit the environment, contributing to a greener and more climate resilient agri-food systems, which is at the heart of our key guiding policies. The European Green Deal, with its farm to fork strategy, also the SDGs, and the CARICOM vision for Caribbean agriculture. CARDI, ITC, and IICA, you are all key partners for the European Union and critical elements in the development of the coconut industry in Caribbean. On the one hand, the coconut sector provides important employment opportunities for rural populations, and with regards in particular to small-scale farmers, there is a good potential to improve their income by enhancing their productivity, income diversification, and integration into formal markets. On the other hand, addressing these issues, especially the integration into international markets that are profitable, requires a high level of quality and safety standards for consumers. In addition, increasing sanitary and phytosanitary compliance consistent with international standards is paramount to help the Caribbean grasp the benefits of regional and international trade and further integrate within the region and into the global economy. All these you support and your efforts share the ultimate goal of contributing to the economic development of CARIFORUM states and seeing the Caribbean take full advantage of the economic partnership agreements with you, the world's largest single trading bloc. This way, making it easier for people and business from the Caribbean and you to trade and invest with each other and to help CARIFORUM countries with economic growth and job creation. To achieve all this, a strong coordination among different national and international partners is needed. So let me thank each of you for using your position to improve the efficiency of our support. Finally, let me reiterate the EU's full support to make the most of these projects. I wish you a very, very fruitful collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Meyer. Every step of aid coordination counts. Thank you for those words, and thank you for your intervention and for the ongoing support of the EU to this region, especially in furthering the implementation of the Economic Partnership Agreement commitment. Thank you again. The second partner organization in this initiative is the Caribbean Forum Directorate of ACP states and Caribbean Pacific states, commonly referred to as CARIFORUM, which is a main channel through which the Caribbean region engages with the EU. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to invite Mr. Desmond John, Director of Development Cooperation, to give some remarks on behalf of the CARIFORUM Directorate. Mr. John, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Louis Maia, Head of Cooperation, Delegation of the European Union, Ms. Ana Marisa Cordero Peña, Head, Agricultural Health and Food Safety Program, IICA, Mr. Ansari Hussein, Manager, Service Technology and Innovation, CARDI, Mr. Hernan Manson, Head, Inclusive Agribusiness and Trade, ITC, Mr. William Castro, ITC, colleagues, project stakeholders. It is with great pleasure that the CARIFORUM Directorate is part of this very important sending activity. I bring you greetings from the Director General of the CARIFORUM and the CARICOM, Dr. Carla Barnett, and from the Director General of the Secretary General of CARIFORUM and CARICOM, Dr. Carla Barnett, and the Director General of CARIFORUM, Mr. Percival Marie. As you know, the CARIFORUM Directorate is the coordinating center, if you may, for European Union Development Cooperation with CARIFORUM. And this project today is one of 17 programs, large programs, for which the CARIFORUM Directorate has oversight and which is funded by the European Union under the 11th EDF. I just want to say that the estimated total funding from the EU for 11th EDF regional programs comes up to approximately 191 million euros. So it's a substantive amount of funding. And that does not include the 135 million euros, which is managed by the Caribbean Investment Facility. We are extremely pleased to be part of the signing ceremony. And we are pleased to be part of that signing ceremony because when we look at the objective of this program, which is, of course, to ensure or to enhance the competitiveness of the small-scale farmers in coconut value chains. And we analyze the purpose of the ITC, the functions of CARDI, and the functions of IICA. We see all the elements of a natural partnership coming together. So we understand it to be natural that the key players, ITC, IICA, and CARDI, have come together to formalize their collaboration and their cooperation through the signing of that letter of intent to support development of the regional coconut industry, drawing from the extensive collective knowledge and expertise in the various areas. We believe that the thoughtfulness of those three institutions can be seen and can serve as an example to other institutions on how agencies and institutions can collaborate on areas of mutual interest in the best interests of the community. We are confident that this collaboration will lead to improved performance of the program. And let me say that we are satisfied that the program is performing very well. But we do recognize that there are some setbacks as a result of COVID-19. And I believe that the need to have signed this agreement, this letter of intent, can only lead to further strengthening collaboration, further ensuring that the objectives of the program would be met. As we know, the agricultural sector in the CARIFORUM region is a very important sector. We also know that the coconut industry is a very, very important industry within that sector. And the benefits of its development will be felt not only by the big producers, but by the small farmers in the rural sectors. And those include women Those include creating opportunities to advance women in agriculture. We have taken good note of the significant amount of webinars and capacity building activities that have been undertaken. But what we found very interesting is that those activities have involved institutions, organizations completely outside the realm of CARIFORUM. Organizations as far as the Philippines. And that tells us the span, the reach, and the extent to which the ITC, IICA, and CARDI are going to ensure that the best technical support, the best technical assistance, the best knowledge transfer will be provided so as to ensure that the stakeholders in the agricultural sector in general, and in the coconut industry in particular, will receive the fullest benefits of this project. With that, I will just like to wish the project well. I am pleased with this signing. I note that we will have the technical seminar coming on. And I've also noted that we have our Bureau of Standards who would be involved and who are in fact stakeholders in this important endeavor. So with that, I want to thank you very much. I want to thank the EU for its continued support. I want to thank IICA for organizing this very important event. And I look forward to continued success in this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. John, for those remarks. As usual, you underscore the wisdom of natural partners. That was your tagline, as well as you gave the context of the role of the CARIFORUM in this intervention. Thanks again. At this juncture, it is important to hear from the 3 signatories to the agreement. They will share some brief insight on the convergence of 2 complementary initiatives that are geared towards reinforcing food safety standards and strengthening of sanitary and phytosanitary and quality compliance systems in the region within the context of the coconut industry. Therefore, I will now invite these representatives who previously agreed to take no more than 3 minutes each to summarize the specific aspects of their collaboration that is aimed at facilitating positive outcomes and outputs for both the coconut as well as the SPS measures project that are both funded under the 11th PDF program. So first, I will turn the spotlight on the International Trade Center. This is an entity that is dedicated to supporting the internationalization of small and medium enterprises. With the target group being small-scale farmers in the coconut industry, it gives me great pleasure to invite Mr. William Castro Rodriguez, project coordinator at ITC, give some remarks on behalf of the center. Mr. Castro, Mr. Rodriguez, thank you.
Both work. Thank you very much, moderator. And to keep to the 3 minutes, let me observe all the protocols and say my good mornings, good afternoon, good evening to all of our colleagues and partners. First, let me begin by congratulating and thanking the CARICOM Secretariat and the associated regional institutions for hosting and organizing this Caribbean Week of Agriculture, which has many important events. For us in the ITC, it's a great pleasure to be here at this event and to be here to sign this virtually letter of intent to formalize the collaboration between the 3 organizations, IICA, CARDI, and the ITC. And first, let me begin by thanking our donors and partners, especially the European Union, CARIFORUM Directorate, the Organization for Africa and Caribbean and Pacific States, and of course, many important regional partners that have been supporting the implementation of the project in the ACP countries and industries, and in particular, the Caribbean. ITC and CARDI have maintained alliances to support the coconut industry with the support from the EU and CARI forums. This is the first phase of the project in 2015. And we're very happy today to formalize this collaboration with IICA to scale up the support and find even more synergies within our projects. And I say the word formalize because we have been already collaborating in other layers of the project through our national networks that we call the stakeholder platforms, and other important activities in the countries. So we really believe that these joint efforts is key to keep promoting responsible production and commercialization systems in the coconuts and associated value chains. As we all know, ITC and CARDI were implementing what we call the Alliances for Action approach. This works as a network that promotes responsible partnerships for development and better trade, and leverage investments, technical support to achieve measurable impact for smallholder farmers and micro, small, and medium enterprises in the region. Through this approach, we engage smallholder farmers and MSMEs to manage risk, facilitate the networks that provide the technical expertise, build the capacity, and target catalytic investments to address the systemic challenges that we have in the region. Of course, this collaboration will help us to improve our implementation on the ground, scale up the support, align the policies, help us align the policies in each of the country to support the farmer-led organizations and to expand the coconut production and commercialization. We're very sure that this will help us to reduce the risk into investing into the value chains by collaborating with policymakers, buyers, financial institutions, and other support institutions that will help to increase the capacity of the smallholder farmers and MSMEs. So with this, I would like to thank you all for being here at this event. And we continue to pledge our support to continue promoting integrated value chains into the Caribbean. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rodriguez. This was very good for providing the context on ITC's role in this very important regional initiative and for keeping within the time. Thank you so much. At this point, I think I want to say that, you know, we are faced these days with a tendency to base important development decisions on ideological positions and preferences. And I think this is a time when entities like CARDI are critical in guiding policy formulation and targeting intervention. It is within this context that I invite Mr. Ansari Hossain, Manager of Science, Technology and Innovation, to give some brief remarks on behalf of CARDI. Mr. Hossain, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good day, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. This signing ceremony today is really a display of commitment among our respective institutions to address the SPS and associated quality compliance issues, particularly in this case as it relates to the coconut industry. As you would have heard a little overview before, the coconut project, as we like to call it, is now in phase 2. Phase 1 being in 2015 to 2018, and phase 2 ends in 2023. This project, the official title being Alliances for Coconut Industry Development, Expansion and Enhanced Support for the Caribbean, is being implemented by CARDI and ITC along with our partners in 12 countries in the region, and is financed under the 11th EDF, with oversight being provided by, as you would have heard, the CARI Forum Directorate. It aims really to enhance the competitiveness of small-scale farmers and facilitate an integrated coconut value chain. And as we seek to improve the production and productivity, we must also keep our eye on matters relating to quality and health. And this is where the issues of food safety standards and SPS and quality compliance and so on comes in. In terms of the action being taken today, CARDI has a long-standing, historical, fruitful relationship with IICA. And over that time, we have delivered many achievements over many years, covering a wide range of commodities and thematic areas. Similarly, but although not as long, with the ITC, in this case, since around 2014, 2013, we have been working together, developing the regional coconut industry. And likewise, we delivered significant outputs in that short time and continue to do so under this second phase of the project. The agreement being signed today is also consistent with the Alliances for Action approach, which William touched on earlier, and you would have heard if you attended the session on Monday this week. It is also consistent with CARDI's long-standing policy of working together, a fundamental pillar of the way that we do business. It is really a recognition that no single institution can do all that is required on its own. All of us as individual entities simply do not have all the resources required, whether we speak about human resources, financial resources, intellectual or physical resources. We all have our individual strengths, and likewise, we recognize we all have weaknesses. Simply put, we need to work together to get the job done. Additionally, the course of action being pursued today will maximize the use of the resources that are made available by preventing duplication of activities by the two projects. More bang for the buck, as you would say. And to that extent, therefore, we wish to thank our partners for contributing tremendously to these efforts, the EU, the OECPS, CARIFORUM Secretariat, and in the technical session which follows this signing ceremony, CrossQ and the NSP representatives in Guyana and St. Lucia. We no doubt look forward to this alliance, which identified clear opportunities for synergies between both projects to deliver real action and real results to the agricultural communities of this region, so that in time to come, a few years down the road, we can speak of this alliance in the context of being a true success story which created long-lasting positive impacts. And with that, I thank you for your time this morning. Over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hussain. Your intervention was spot on in underscoring. You spoke about this is a display of commitment, and I think it is so true. And thank you for underscoring the need and continued importance of regional research entities such as CARDI in charting the way in transforming our food systems in general and in yielding results in specific projects such as the Coconut Water Standards Project. So thank you again. The final speaker in terms of our collaborating entities, but by no means the least, is my colleague, Mrs. Ana Marisa Cordero Peña, Head of Agricultural Health and Food Safety Program, who will speak on IICA's role and obligations under this agreement. So Anna, I hand over the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Beverly. Mr. Luis Maya, Head of Cooperation, Delegation of the European Union, Mr. Desmond Young, Director, Development Cooperation, CARIFORUM Directorate, Mr. Ansari Hussain, Manager Science, Technology and Innovation, CARDI, Mr. Hernan Manson and William Castro from ITC, partners, stakeholders from the coconut industry, ladies and gentlemen, hello to everyone. It is indeed a pleasure to bring remarks on behalf of IICA at this very important signing ceremony to formalize the collaboration between the ITC, CARDI, and IICA. Developing a strategic partnership has been a key pillar of the delivery of IICA's technical cooperation actions, and this has yielded many positive results, which have not only led to greater development impacts, but sustained relationships among institutions and professionals. Today, this partnership, which is being forged under the 11th EDF SPS Measures Project and the 11th EDF Coconut Industry Development Project, is no different, and we are therefore very pleased about this collaboration. The 11th EDF Measure Project, which forms the basis of this partnership, is an important action for the Caribbean, not only in terms of expanding our markets internationally, but in addition, one that contributes to transforming our food sector for improved food and nutrition security. Specifically, the project seeks to address SPS compliance constraints impacting CARIFORUM countries and focuses on advancing the development of the SPS regulatory environment, strengthening public and private sector capacity to comply with SPS measures, standards and procedures, and strengthening SPS capacity in the fisheries sector, the latter being implemented by the Caribbean Regional Fisheries Mechanism. The specific work on developing the coconut industry includes the provision of technical assistance to private sector organizations in the areas of training and guidance in key aspects of food safety. In addition, the upgrade of laboratories to undertake tests that are required for the marketing and trade of coconut and coconut products. These interventions will contribute to an increased capacity for exports, increased trade and economic development, increased compliance with international obligations, and improve market access, and a reduction in food safety related incidents. The partnership with the ITC and CARDI will further assist us to achieve these benefits through the rationalization of resources to scale up interventions to reach a larger number of stakeholders and hence a greater impact on livelihoods along the coconut supply chain. We therefore look forward to working with ITC and CARDI to transform the coconut industry for improved trade and economic development. Thank you very much and wish you the best today. Thank you, Beverly.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you very much for your intervention and for underscoring IICA's role, which in short highlights the nexus between the two initiatives in ensuring compliance with international SPS measures in the region. So thanks again. Ladies and gentlemen, with the signing of this letter of intent, the three collaborating entities have not only demonstrated their commitment to adding value to the overall goals of this important initiative through their respective competitive advantage, but also to nurturing cooperation that will yield more impactful and sustainable development results among CARIFORUM member states. I now take great pleasure in inviting the three representatives of the collaborating organizations to display the signed letter of intent for all to see, as well as to take a photo up. I think it's opportune. So could you please turn on your cameras for the three collaborating entities and hold up the signed letter of intent. Great. Thank you so very much. Excellent. So, ladies and gentlemen, done? Excellent. Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, before I bring this segment of the event to a close, I wish to take a few more minutes to give a synopsis on the areas of cooperation that will be pursued among the three parties within the framework of this agreement. These include 1, knowledge management and information dissemination relating to the development of the agri-food system, in particular, the coconut industry. 2, establishment of responsible and inclusive public-private production and commercialization connections with alliances for action partners. 3, capacity building initiatives in the area of production and processing. And 4, strengthening systems for improved sanitary and phytosanitary compliance in the Caribbean. I wish to thank you all for your attention and participation in this signing ceremony. Thanks again. And special thanks to all the speakers of this event, that is the representatives of our partner organizations, the EU and the CARIFORUM Directorate, as well as our collaborating organization, ITC, CARDI, and IICA. And I really take this opportunity to wish everyone a productive and rewarding day and mind you, it's not yet over. We have the next segment, and I wish everyone continued success for the rest of this week's activities in Caribbean Week of Agriculture. So before we close, one more thing, to turn on all our cameras. So we have one big photo up of this event, just to make sure that we have the memorabilia of this event for all to see. It happened. Thanks again. Excellent. So I now hand over to my co-host or my co-moderator, Mr. Kenny Daniel, who is the chair of the National Stakeholders Platform of the Coconut Development Project in St. Lucia. He will be the moderator of session 2 of this event, which is the technical event. So ladies and gentlemen, I thank you, and I hand you over now to Mr. Daniel.
Thank you very much, Chair Ms. Beverly Bess, for a job well done, and I hope to follow in your footsteps. The second phase of this session of this webinar, we deal with the introductory remarks and content, and I'd like to call on Mr. Tristan Alvarez so that he can start the process running. Tristan?
Thank you very much, Mr. Daniel, much appreciated. And it's good to follow in the aftermath of this signing ceremony, really a testament to the collaboration amongst regional, hemispheric, and global partners. So I'm talking about the International Trade Center, IICA, and of course, CARDI. So as we enter into this technical session, allow me to also express my gratitude to the European Union for the financing provided under and through the 11th EDF, European Development Fund, and allow me also to recognize and thank the CARIFORM Secretary for their role in making that funding available as well through the Caribbean Regional Indicative Program. They have provided great support throughout the past years, the 6+ years that we have been in the vineyard doing this work. So thank you very much to the EU and the CARIFORM Secretariat. Now, this technical webinar focuses on the promotion of the regional standard as it pertains to natural coconut water. And the lead agency for this would be CROSQ, the Caribbean Organization on Quality and Standards. And this is their mandate and remit. And we would have been able to support that mandate during the first phase of the Coconut Project during the period 2014 to 2018. During this period, in collaboration with CROSQ, we would have ventured into really rationalizing what that standard would be, having consultations across the various countries and bringing to bear a standard that would really seek to meet the needs of those within the value chain process, more so the processors of coconut water. You're going to hear about it from our esteemed presenters, speaking on behalf of CROSQ and also a private sector perspective. We were unable to really finalize the standard itself during that first phase, 2014 to 2018, but we have had the opportunity with CROSQ really doing the bulk of the work in terms of bringing that standard to fruition during this year, 2021. So that is the context in essence where we find ourselves. It's part and parcel of the sanitary and phytosanitary measures, of which is the nexus in terms of IICA, ITC, and CARDI. So it really follows on from that signing ceremony, and you're seeing that letter of intent being taken into action now. So we're not taking a pause at all. We're going straight into it, and we really want to bring to bear what this standard means for the coconut water processors within the region. I know that there has been some robust debate in some of the countries, and that continues. As we know, standards have to be adopted nationally, but we do look forward to hearing about the process of how these standards were arrived at. So that would give us some clarity for those who may not have been part of the process. 2, we're going to look at the specifications themselves, so the technical content behind the standard, and we're going to look at the code of practice. What does this mean for the businesses that need to utilize both the specification and the code of practice? So with that, let me hand back over to the chair so we can continue hearing from our esteemed presenters on these matters. Chair?
Thank you, Tristan. I think job well done. Just to add a few things, what has happened in St. Lucia since COVID, we had a situation where most of our young people involved in the hotel were laid off, and a certain drive took place, and you found that most of them returned to the lands, harvesting coconuts and immediately becoming roadside vendors. There we were very concerned about the standard and food safety, and to hear that we are now looking at getting the standard in place and adopted, I think it will mean a lot to St. Lucia, and I'm sure to the other islands, so that we can have a safe product on the shelves. Ms. Philippa O'Connor is our first presenter, and Philippa O'Connor she's a senior standard officer at the Bureau of Standards in Jamaica. She is meticulous, detailed, and organized quality personnel with over 8 years experience in standard development, conformity and assessment, and technical regulations. Ms. O'Connor possesses a BSc in dietetics nutrition and manages the national discussions recording and the revised coconut water standards, as well as nutrition and front package labeling. Ms. O'Connor, we had an opportunity to work with her in Jamaica, and I can tell you she was very thorough in her work. So, with no further ado, let me just bring on Ms. O'Connor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Daniels, for that introduction. Is everyone hearing me?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Okay. All right, perfect. Good morning. So let me share my screen. And everyone is able to see the PowerPoint presentation. Yes?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
All right, so as introduced earlier, my name is Philippa O'Connor, and I'm a senior standards officer with the Bureau of Standards Jamaica. I also facilitated the revision of the coconut water standards, well, particularly the specification and the code of practice. My focus this morning for this presentation, I'm going to be taking a look at the regional standards process generally, as well as the process that produced the revised specification and the code of practice. My colleague, Mrs. Cheryl Lewis, will be taking a more detailed look at the outline of the specification, rather the requirements, and my other colleague, Mr. Trotz, I believe, will be taking a closer look at like the industry best practices and so forth. So let me just begin my presentation. The content for this morning's presentation is that I'm going to be taking a look at the CROSQ, that's the regional standards body, and the standards development process from the regional angle, as well as the roles and the responsibilities of the national standards body. And I know, well, some of you here might be a part of that process in terms of participating on different committees per the national standards body for the different member states. I know Mr. Daniel participated in the revision of the coconut water standard on behalf of St. Lucia. I'm going to also take a look at the regional technical subcommittee and its composition, and that's the Rtsc that was responsible for revising the water specification and the code of practice. So my focus primarily will be looking at the process. So what is CROSQ? Now, the acronym CROSQ, it represents the CARICOM Regional Organization for Standards and Quality, and it was first established in February 2002 as a regional intergovernmental organization with the primary objective of facilitating the development of regional standards, promoting harmonization of metrology systems, and supporting the sustainable production and trade of goods and services in the CARICOM single market and economy. Now, currently, the constituents of CROSSQ is predominantly the 15 member states, and to highlight, these include Antigua and Barbuda, the Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Dominica, Grenada, Guyana, Haiti, Jamaica, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Suriname, and Trinidad and Tobago. Now, we want to now take a look at the CROSSQ standards development process. So how do we begin the process of revising or developing a regional standard? Now, the CROSSQ standards development process is carried out by regional technical committees, more commonly known as RTCs, as well as regional technical subcommittees, more commonly known as Rtscs. And these committees, they comprise of qualified representatives from the industry, from government, consumer bodies, and regional organizations. And it must be noted that each RTC, that's Regional Technical Committee, and each Rtsc, Regional Technical Subcommittee, is assigned to a member country. So one might ask, so what is the difference between a RTC and a Rtsc? Now, as the name denotes, Rtsc, it's a subcommittee. So the higher tier would be a regional technical committee. So perhaps you would have a regional technical committee for labeling, which does exist. There is a regional technical committee for labeling that's hosted by the member state, Jamaica. But under that broad tier labeling committee, there are different types of labeling. You have labeling of foods, you have labeling of household commodities, perhaps labeling of clothing and other stuff. And so those different scope, for example, the labeling of foods would now form a regional technical subcommittee. So you'd have the regional technical committee for labeling, and then you'd have the regional technical subcommittee for the labeling of prepackaged foods. So that would give an example as to the differentiation between RTC and Rtsc. Now, currently, Jamaica is involved in this process, and we host the, and I'm pointing this out here because we're making reference to coconut water. So we currently host the RTC for nutritional labeling, labeling in general, and the packaged natural coconut water standards to include the specification and the code of practice. Now, these committees, they report to what we call a technical management committee, more commonly known as a TMC. And this body is responsible for the management of the technical work of CROSSQ as it relates to standards development. So it's like a governing entity that provides oversight regarding standards development. And each member state is given one representation and an alternate on the TMC. So into the real deal, how do we formulate? What is the process for formulating a regional standard? Now, firstly, we have to have the proposal stage, and I will give case in point the coconut water standard, since that is the topic of this morning's gathering. Now, I think about three years ago, around 2018, there were some discussions, or rather there were some concerns regarding the trade of coconut water in the region, and trying to form some form of commonality to ensure that these goods are traded fairly throughout the region, and that there are set criteria to facilitate this trade. And so the two standards, the code of practice and the specification, they were perceived to be the most appropriate tool to be used in the region in terms of creating that level of synergy and harmonization. And so that request came to CROSSQ for the coconut water documents to be revised, for the specifications to be updated, and there were some concerns as well regarding food safety and the microbial limits. So that process commenced at the proposal stage, where that request was made to cross-review for the documents to be revised. And then subsequent to the proposal stage, there was a preparatory stage, and that included drafting. So doing the necessary research to produce the draft for the coconut water standard and the specification. And we had engaged a consultant to assist with that. And that kind of helps to have expedited the process with the preparatory stage. Now we had advanced from the preparatory stage to the committee stage. And at the committee stage, we pretty much ratified all the concerns and prepared the final document that would now be submitted for inquiry. Now, the draft was submitted for inquiry in the latter part of 2018 into 2019. And we are required, being a standards body, we are required to oblige with the requirements of the WTO TBT agreement, which prescribes that standards should be notified for a minimum of 60 days. And so at that inquiry stage, we had engaged a CARICOM member states for a 60 days public inquiry period, where different member states were allowed time to consult with their pertinent stakeholders, industry groups, government representatives, etc., regarding the content of the standard. And through that stage, we had a huge volume of comments from the different member states. And so between 2019 to the early part of 2021, we've been back and forth with the consultant, back and forth with the different member states, trying to comb through the different comments to reach some form of resolution. And so that would have culminated the inquiry stage. And so in May of this year, the document, it was submitted to the Cross-Review Council, that's the Coconut Water Standards, and the council approved it, and it was subsequently submitted to the quoted, and that's the Council for Trade and Economic Development, where it was also approved, and the process was finalized with the standards being published. So that would have just given you a picture, as in walking through the different stages of the regional standards development process. Now, having established what a RTC is, what a Rtsc is, what they do, and the process to develop a regional standard, we want to take a little more look at what the functions of the RTCs are. So primarily for assignment and formation of regional technical committee and subcommittees, the RTCs are also responsible for drafting preliminary drafts and issuing these drafts for review by committees. And then through these RTCs, these final drafts, they're submitted to the Bureau of Standards, and that's the Bureau of Standards in each different member state for submission to cross-review. I want to also note here, and I will cover it a little bit more in the subsequent slides, that the Bureau of Standards is the designated standards body in each member state, and they are the liaison organization with cross-review. So whatever concern the RTC has, they would filter that through the NSB, and the NSB would also filter that back to cross-review. Now, I just touched on this regarding the goals and responsibilities of the national standards body in the standards development process. So the role is extensive. The national standards body, they are responsible for hosting regional technical committees, also responsible for facilitating technical committees developing regional standards, circulating these regional standards for comments, relaying these comments and draft standards to the cross-review secretariat, participating in the cross-review special committees that also includes the technical management, editorial council, and also, where possible, hosting special committee meetings. The national standards body also responsible for voting and commenting on regional standards, where there are new work item proposals and final draft CARICOM standards. The NSB is also responsible for responding to queries and providing technical support to other member states, promoting the regional standards development process, adopting regional standards, and proposing new standards as needed. So in light of that, and having identifying what the different stages of the process are, and the functions of the RTC, why did we formulate a RTC to take a look at the coconut water standard. Now, the Rtc for coconut water, it was established primarily to facilitate the revision of the standard specification and code of practice for coconut water. Now, both documents, that's the specification and the code of practice, they are intended to outline the specifications for packaged natural coconut water that will be offered for sale in CARICOM. Now, it was necessary, as I had mentioned in the preface earlier, that it was necessary to have both documents revised so as to align the packaged natural water, coconut water industry, and to clearly differentiate the product of undiluted natural coconut water. And my colleague, Mrs. Lewis, will go in detail regarding the scope of the standard, but as mentioned here, it is for packaged natural coconut water. I want to also mention here that by nature, CARICOM standards, they are voluntary. So when the draft has been finalized and has been promulgated, the onus is on the CARICOM member state to make that determination whether they will pass it as a mandatory requirement, where those producers within that jurisdiction, they'll have to comply with the requirements of the standard, as well as for those goods that are being imported. Now, membership in the Rtc that had revised the coconut water standard, we had membership from Jamaica, from St. Lucia, Dominica, Barbados, Antigua and Barbuda, Guyana, Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, and the St. Vincent and the Grenadines. From that discourse, we were able to revise the CRS-3 packaged natural coconut water specification and the CRCP02 packaged natural coconut water code of practice. And both standards, they were approved by quoted in May 2021, and they have now been published and are available as CARICOM regional standards. And I think that would conclude my presentation in terms of the regional standards development process and the process for revising the coconut water draft. Thank you so much for your attention. And if there be any questions, the floor is still open.
Okay, thank you, Ms. O'Connor. I think what we're going to be doing is towards the end of the other presenters, after Mr. Trotz, we'll probably open up and then ask questions. So if any person has any questions, they can probably put it in the chat room, and then we can probably follow up with it. Thank you very much. You made it look so simple, but I know we went through so much sourcing and all that kind of thing for the standards. But I'm happy to hear that it got approved, and I'm looking forward to getting it, making it a standard in St. Lucia. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
We now get ready to call on Mrs. Lewis. I think Mrs. Lewis, will be looking at the details of the standards as Ms. O'Connor indicated. And before we take up any more time, let me just introduce and ask Mrs. Lewis to come forward, and then we'll take it up from there after. Thank you very much. Mrs. Lewis.
Yes, good morning all. It is my pleasure to be part of this initiative this morning and to present on the behalf of the Crossview Secretariat. I will be looking at the specification, and Mr. Raymond Trotz, who is also a member of the RTC, will look at the code of practice. Are you seeing the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So we're looking at packaged natural coconut water. We would have gone through part of this already in Philippa's presentation, where you knew how the committee was established and who was part of the whole development process. So the scope of the application, the specification is applicable to packaged natural coconut water. So it's the natural coconut water, which is offered for sale and consumption, and it only applies to coconut water that is in a natural state without the use of additives. The standard contains specifications, quality control requirements, speaks to contaminants, hygiene requirements, labeling requirements. But what is natural coconut water? It is the liquid endosperm of the nut coccus area, not expressed, but obtained from sown fruit by manual or mechanical means. So you're either cutting the nut or you are going to drill the nut to get the liquid endosperm out of it. The product is typically colorless or relatively clear and shall be unadulterated, untreated, and not sweetened. No, you're not allowed to do anything to the product. Typically, we all enjoy a nice drink of coconut water. We can't always have it straight from the nut, as the ones in the picture are enjoying it. We would love to be able to have it on our tables in a ready form. And the only way that we can have that is by having a packaged natural coconut water. But what is packaged coconut water? Is the natural coconut water filled into containers of various compositions, forms, and capacities, and hermetically sealed. So you're making sure you're using sanitary conditions, you're just transferring the liquid into the container and sealing it in a controlled environment. So the quality of your product obviously depends on how it was produced. So Mr. Trotz will go into this a little further, but you're going to be choosing nuts that are between 6 to 12 months after pollination. You're going to try to harvest them at the cooler part of the day so as to not to have any deterioration of the actual coconut water, and you're not allowed to let the nuts fall because you're trying to control damage to the actual nut, the shell itself. You're also required to not allow the nuts to come into contact with the ground, and that is again a sanitary measure. And there's a recommendation to use field crates made of impervious material or metal cages or trolleys to directly receive those nuts so that you reduce the incidences of contamination of the nuts. You're going to process them in a timely manner. And as I said before, you're trying to reduce the conditions which will contaminate or cause the nuts and the water contained therein to deteriorate. So you're washing them and you're sanitizing them, and you're going to transfer them to a surface where they can, a clean surface off the ground, and allow them to air dry. Obviously, your practices are going to be very important because you need to make sure that you're sanitizing water. That is no sense in saying that you're cleaning something with something that is not clean. So you need to make sure that you are changing that sanitizing water at a good frequency. So now we look at the actual physiological properties. We're getting into the actual specifications of the coconut water and the importance of the pH. the acidity of the coconut water decreases with maturity, and this contributes to the increasing sweetness of the water. And so it's shown that a pH of 5 to 5.9 is a good achievable. So that is what is required. Additionally, between the 7 to 9 months, the sweetness of the coconut water increases to its maximum when sugar content increases. And from 10 to 30 months, the sugar level decreases and coconut water tastes less sweet. And this is represented by the bricks, which is a measure of the total soluble solids. So they are allowing a bricks of 3.8 to 7.5. Then the other requirements are the microbiological requirements. So these are will all be seen as means of making sure that you have maintained sanitary conditions in your producing of the products. So you're not contaminating the product. So you have a total aerobic pH count of less than 1,000. You have a total coliform count of less than 10. The E. coli must be absent, so no E. coli. Your yeast and molds less than 250. Your Staphylococcus aureus, Salmonella, and Listeria species should be absent, and these are quality requirements. So you're also going to assess the organoleptic requirements, features of the product. So the packaged natural coconut water should have a normal color, flavor, and odor. So organoleptic are the ones that you use your senses, so the sense of taste, smell, and sight. So the normal color shall be clear to hazy. And some of the observations and the indications that you will be looking for is rancidity, which is an indication that the fats have been broken down. If you have a sulfur odor, then that's an indication that the proteins in the product have broken down. If you're seeing the presence of gas, it shows that there's some sort of fermentation going on. If you have a foul odor, bacterial action. If you see turbidity or yellowing, also an indication of bacterial action. And then the phenolic oxidation and temperature or heat abuse, you would observe browning of the product. So you would look to see that none of these things none of these observations are seen for your product. The contaminants, you're going to make sure that it's free from adulteration and extraneous matter. So no, you're not having dust and bits that come from anything in your operations. Heavy metals should be in the acceptable limits. The pesticide limits should also be within the requirements of Codex, and you have any compliance with acceptable residual limits for the other agro agents, like your cleansing agents and so on. As it relates to the heavy metals, the arsenic shall be no more than 0.05 milligrams per kilogram. The cadmium, 0.05, the lead, 0.03, and mercury, 0.01. So that is the heavy metals. When it comes to the labeling of the product, the labeling requirements as outlined in CRS 5, labeling of a packaged food, will apply. Which should mean things like you have to have your branding, you have the name of the food. In this case, under the CRS 3, you are going to designate, which is the actual specification for the packaged natural coconut water, you're going to designate your product as packaged natural coconut water. You're going to also have to to state the name of the processor, the date of packaging. Those are the things that are outlined in CRS 5. However, what is peculiar for this product is that you would also, well, you're always required to give storage instructions in compliance with CRS 5. However, for this particular one, you're also going to make sure that you state keep refrigerated below the 4 degrees C, so as to maintain the integrity of the product. And if you are selling the product in a frozen state, which you recognize that that is industry practice, we want to make sure that we don't have a case of temperature abuse where you're going to be having the product repeatedly thawed and refrozen and thawed again. So we place this requirement to, once you are selling the product in a frozen state, that you shall put on the product frozen product, and this shall be placed in close proximity to the name of the food. So where you put the name packaged natural coconut water, under that you're going to put frozen product, and we hope that this will help to inform the consumer that once the product is frozen, then is maintained in that way until you are ready to use it. Additionally, you shall give clear instructions for the storage and use of the product. So as I said, they keep frozen before consumption, thaw under refrigerated conditions at 4 degrees C, do not refreeze, shake well before use, and refrigerate after opening. And we hope that having this declaration on the package label, it will ensure that the consumer handles the product as we want it to be handled, as the processors intend for it to be handled. And of course, you have the declaration of the best before date. As well, these next steps are now outdated because we was just informed by Philippa that the standard has in fact been accepted by COTED and has gone to publication, which is very good news. So we are now at the stage where we would have the CARICOM member states will adopt the standard and have put administrative provisions in place so that we would decide whether or not we would give it legal effect, so that whether or not you're going to make it mandatory or not. We would employ good regulatory practice so that we make sure that this is going to be used. And for sure, we'll need to have necessary education and awareness campaigns to develop and implement the standard. And the ultimate goal is to give the consumer the product in a state that they can enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Chris. I think I can see a number of the roadside vendors coming up and saying, whoa, you were sitting in that meeting and you didn't do anything for us?
Well, I guess they can still utilize the practices. It's just that it wasn't intended, it's not intended for this street vendor, but they can still utilize the practices. They're not left out.
I think what we are looking at now is to develop a coconut cooperative so that the cooperative will undertake that responsibility, and the roadside vendors could now come to the cooperative or be employed with the cooperative so that they operate under the standards that are now set by this packaged natural coconut water standards. All right, thank you very much, Mrs. Cheryl Lewis. I think you've gone through it in detail, and I'm sure you made it look very simple. I can remember the arguments between shall and should. It took some time, but you know, that's what it was all about. So we now have Mr. Raymond Trotz, all right, coming up with the code of practice. And then Mr. Raymond Trotz, his early life was in a multicultural village that might have influenced his interest in weaving unity and in diversity, and later shaping it into a balance of serving in a profession that impacts the lives of small farmers with the need for creating a socially cohesive society. Like I said earlier in our little presentation, the small farmers in most of the islands, in rural communities, including women, were actually employed as a result of all the negatives that came about with COVID. Yeah, so that's what happens. Excuse me, I have a slight problem. Okay. So
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. I will just ask Tristan to forward my presentation. Thanks again, and all protocols are observed for recognition. It's good to be with my colleagues once more. Commendations to Ms. O'Connor and to Ms. Lewis. I think they both did, Ms. O'Connor did a sterling job over the last 2 years in guiding us through the process of discussions, and they have been very, very intense, and that has resulted in stringent standards, some of which what we can discuss after. I am very cognizant of the rise of our roadside vendors across the Caribbean, especially here in Guyana also. And it is interesting that they are already, making an attempt to meet the standards that we have been discussing. But we can have a discussion on that at the end. Tristan, are you there? Okay, good. Well, I don't think I need to go through what has been done already. Can you move to slide 3? This is what we were talking about as the end product. How do we get from that last image that Ms. Lewis showed, getting the water from the nut into the bottle? It's a very, very delicate and challenging process, but the end product will look something like this. 2 brands from Guyana. Please move to the scope, Tristan. That should be slide 6. We've gone through that before. Yes, okay. So the scope of the code of practice that I'll be presenting will range from harvesting through processing, packaging, storing, transporting, and distribution. Next. Terms and definitions. We spent a lot of time on this. For purposes of this document, the terms and definitions given in CRS 3, the following applies. Accredited testing laboratory means testing laboratory to which accreditation has been granted. Cleaning means removal of soil, residue, dirt, grease, visible extraneous matter, any other physical matter or any other objectionable matter from surfaces. And contamination means introduction or occurrence of a contaminant in food or the food environment. Next. The food establishment. This refers to any premises, place, area, or building where food intended for public consumption is sold, offered for sale, supplied, handled, prepared, packaged, displayed, held, served, processed, stored, transported, or dispensed. This also the surroundings under the control of the same management and any other place declared by the national competent authority to be under food safety regulations. This would include any land, buildings, vehicles, parts of structures, tents, stalls, and other temporary structures, boats and pontoons, regardless of whether it is owned by the proprietor or includes those used principally as a private dwelling. You can see the range of conditions under which the coconut water can be produced. What is meant by potable water? Water that meets the recommendations of the national competent authorities, such as the World Health Organization. And by sanitation, we mean all actions dealing with cleaning and maintaining hygienic conditions in an establishment, ranging from cleaning and or sanitizing of specific equipment to periodic cleaning activities throughout the establishment, including buildings, structural and grounds cleaning activities. Now we come to harvesting. Processors should ensure that coconuts used for the commercial packaging of coconut water, natural coconut water, are harvested between 6 to 12 months after visible appearance of the fruit. Harvest time is preferably during the cooler part of the day to minimize post-harvest deterioration, since high temperature at harvest will lead to more rapid physiological changes and deterioration. Free fall of coconuts should not be allowed. Coconuts should be lowered from the tree when picked, but should not be allowed to come into direct contact with or impact the ground. This is just a brief illustration, demonstration of what the process is like. If you wish, Tristan, you can fast forward it, and you'll see that the process involves someone in the tree actually harvesting the nut, and someone at the bottom is with a rope, holding a rope, and then as the nut is severed, the rope becomes taut and it is slowly lowered to the ground. Okay, maybe the video is not playing. You can move to the next slide, Tristan. Now, this brings into focus the popularity of the 18-month dwarf variety. I should mention that a lot of the price of the coconut lies in the harvesting. The harvester can charge as much as 50% of the price of the coconut. So what investors and growers are learning now is that if they get hold of an 18-month variety, then they don't have to employ someone to climb the tree. They say, instead of climbing up, you bend down to pick the nut. But this has got its own limitations in terms of the limitations of the variety itself, which has to be explored and further researched. But this is the 18-month variety. Next. Forward, Tristan. The use of field crates made of impervious material or metal cages, trolleys to directly receive the nuts are a preferred practice. Please note that the standard operating procedures should be established for the maintenance, cleaning, and sanitizing of growing and harvesting tools, such as cutting tools and collecting containers. Growers and agricultural workers should be trained in basic good agricultural practices and follow the standard operating procedures. Forward. Transportation. Having harvested the nuts, coconuts should be adequately protected during transportation. Vehicles and other modes of transportation should be designed and constructed so that they neither contaminate nor damage nuts, can be effectively cleaned and sanitized, permit effective separation of the nuts from the non-food items where necessary during transport, and the transport of chemicals, pesticides, and other potentially hazardous material is strictly prohibited. Next. They should conform to, transportation should conform to applicable public health regulations. We should prevent the nuts from coming into contact directly with the floor of the transporting vehicle or the area of the vehicle in which persons may walk. They should be covered to ensure that no transportation takes place in open vehicles or open trailers unless occurring on a farm from harvesting areas to the storage or processing facility. The nuts are not to be transported in sunlight and at a temperature not exceeding, and they should be transported at a temperature not exceeding 22 degrees Celsius. I should comment that the standards here that are set in this document are for the advanced level of production. As we see here, one of our foremost producers in Guyana, this is from Rtsc factory in Guyana. This is when he was setting up. What you see here is a sloping reception area where the nuts are offloaded into the trough that slopes, and then it is rolled gently down to the area for washing. Next, please. Vehicles and containers used for transporting nuts should be kept clean, dry, and sanitized. Where the same vehicle or carrier is used for transporting different foods or non-foods, effective cleaning and sanitation should take place between loads. Containers for use in holding nuts should be designated and marked for food use only and be used solely for that purpose. When not in use, cleaned, harvest containers and transport trailers should be covered and kept in a protected location. And all damaged containers and transport trailers should be repaired or replaced. Very technical. Selection of coconuts, of whole coconuts. Coconuts should be subjected to organoleptic examination to ensure that they are free from damage and contamination by mechanical means, rodents, sun, and infestation by pests. Coconuts should be washed using running potable water to remove soil and debris, and then sanitized using any suitable sanitizing agent according to good manufacturing practices, which you'll see in the next slide, examples. Washing may be done with a brush if done manually or by mechanical means. Forward. These are some of the sanitizing agents recommended: sodium hypochlorite, hydrogen peroxide, and peroxyacetic acid. Next, please. Coconuts should be stored indoors as follows. At a minimum of 15 centimeters, that's about 6 inches from the floor or flats on pallets, at least 54 centimeters, about 2 feet away from the walls, and at a temperature not exceeding 33 degrees Celsius. The temperature is very important because it can change the color of the water when you get to processing. Coconuts should not be stored in a manner consistent. Coconuts should be stored in a manner consistent with good manufacturing practices to prevent contamination and cross-contamination. Storage rooms should be kept clean, dry, and well ventilated. Avoid storing coconuts in direct sunlight. Coconuts should be processed after harvesting within 120 hours, that is 5 days, when not separated from the bunch, and up to 3 days or 72 hours when separated from the bunch. Food establishments should not be located where there is a threat to food safety and quality. Buildings and grounds should be kept reasonably free of objectionable odor, smoke, dust, or other contaminants. In particular, food establishments should be located away from polluted areas, from industrial activities which pose a serious threat to food safety, from areas prone to flooding unless sufficient safeguards are provided, and areas prone to infestation by pests, and areas where waste, either solid or liquid, cannot be removed effectively. Food establishments should be designed and maintained as per applicable national regulations. And they should be of sound construction, easy to maintain, clean, easily sanitized using recommended agents as in Annex A, protected against entrance and harborage of pests, built in accordance with the requirements of the National Competent Authority and the Code of Practice 5, and of sufficient size for the intended operation without crowding of equipment or personnel. Again, on buildings and facilities, we look at different aspects now. Floors. Floors should be made of waterproof, non-absorbent, washable, and non-skid materials. They should be free of crevices, for example, an epoxy floor, or there's something now called polished concrete. They should be kept clean at all times and sufficiently sloped to allow for proper drainage. Drains should be designed with the inclusion of trapped outlets, designed for easy cleaning and kept clean at all times. Next. Windows. Windows should be easy to clean, constructed to minimize the buildup of dirt, fitted with cleanable insect-proof screens, and designed and/or constructed to prevent food contamination in the case of breakage. Doors. They should have smooth, non-absorbent surfaces, be clean, easy to clean and sanitize, be self-closing, and be constructed to prevent entry of rodents and insects. Walls should be made of impervious materials with no toxic effect in intended use. They should have a smooth surface up to a height appropriate to the operation and be non-absorbent and easy to clean and disinfect. Ceilings should be constructed and finished to minimize the buildup of dirt and condensation, and non-absorbent and easy to clean. I should mention that it is desirable that floors, walls, and ceilings should have a seamless linkage. There should be no crevices in between. That is of importance. Sanitary facilities and controls, there should be adequate separation of the different operations, that is cutting and filling, to ensure contamination is adequately minimized and controlled. Separate rooms. The food establishment should be appropriately laid out to accommodate a one-way flow of raw materials, finished goods, and employees basic HACCP procedures. The water supply should be potable and conform to the international standards for drinking water, and there should be adequate lighting throughout the facility. Light bulbs and fixtures should be of the safety type or otherwise protected to prevent food contamination in case of breakage. I think reset lights are preferred. Adequate ventilation should be approved, especially in areas with excessive heat, steam, obnoxious fumes, or vapors, or contaminating aerosols. Adequate number of restrooms should be provided and be equipped with self-closing doors that do not open directly into the production areas. They should be kept in sanitary condition and provide hand-washing facilities. Hand-washing signs should be posted. Adequate number of hand-washing facilities should be provided at appropriate locations throughout the facility with posted hand-washing signs. Hands-free sinks, as we see now under COVID conditions, single-use towels or automatic hand dryers for hand drying and foot-operated covered bins for waste disposal are recommended. Liquid soap and hand sanitizer should be available. Equipment and containers used for harvesting and production should be constructed to ensure that they can be adequately cleaned, sanitized, and maintained to avoid contamination of foods. All equipment and utensils used should be cleaned and sanitized before and after use in accordance with good manufacturing practices. Equipment and utensils used for inedible contaminated material should be identifiable and only used for such materials. Equipment should be regularly maintained and records kept. Temperature recording devices should be calibrated by the national competent authority at least once per year. Equipment should be located to permit adequate maintenance and cleaning, function in accordance with its intended use, facilitate monitoring, and have a design flow to prevent cross-contamination of in-process and finished products with raw materials. All equipment and utensils such as cutlasses, tables, containers should be of stainless steel to prevent tarnishing and to facilitate easier cleaning and sanitizing. Now, the processing of natural coconut water. Due to the sensitivity of coconut water to temperature and atmosphere, all steps in the processing of natural coconut water should be performed without unnecessary delay and under conditions to prevent the possibility of contamination and deterioration. This is very important. Next. Coconuts characterized by the following must be rejected and must not be included as raw source of coconut water or coconut drink. The presence of cracks, pedicels not intact, that is a cap coming off, any visible sign of pest infestation, coconuts that are not harvested between 6 to 12 months after pollination, coconuts with contents that are cloudy, and coconuts with contents having a rancid odor. Prior to cutting, coconuts should be inspected to ensure that they are free from damage. Coconuts should be washed, rinsed, and sanitized according to Section 6.2 of the Code of Practice. Sanitized coconuts should be transferred to a clean surface off the ground and allowed to air dry. Sanitizing solution, rather, sanitizer plus water that is, should be changed with sufficient frequency to maintain efficacy of sanitizer. And where possible, concentration of sanitizing solution should be verified. Sanitized cutting implements such as stainless steel, cutlass, machete, preferably without wood handles, or other suitable implement for removing the coconut water in a sanitary facility in a sanitary manner should be used. The collecting containers should be washed and sanitized prior to use and should be made from non-toxic, impervious, easily cleanable material. Coconut water that is cloudy and exhibits a rancid odor should be promptly disposed of and should not be mixed with the other coconut water. This is where management is very important. Processors may employ a check of the pH of the coconut water from each nut using appropriate ranged pH paper or a pH meter. Ideally, the pH should be in the range indicated in the accompanying standard CRS3, which you just saw, which represents a wholesome nut with water likely to give the best possible shelf life and quality outcome. I know this might be a little controversial, but it was tested by our experts. Processing of natural coconut water. Filtering. Freshly collected natural coconut water should be filtered into clean, sanitized containers using a sanitized filtering mechanism made of appropriate material or equipment to remove solids and particulates in accordance with good manufacturing practices, and immediately chill. The temperature shock is very important, the thermal shock. Examples of materials for filtering include plastic or metal strainers, voile, muslin or cheesecloth. If voile, muslin or cheesecloth is used, these should be changed or cleaned and sanitized at a frequency of every hour that maintains their hygienic status. Packaging. Packaging should be consistent with the good food hygiene practices as specified in the Code of Practice 5, ensuring that the product will be adequately protected from contamination and hazards during transportation and handling. After filtering, packaged natural coconut water should be sealed in suitable food-grade containers, transferred rapidly to a blast freezer or a chiller or ice bath maintained not more than 4 degrees Celsius, then moved within 24 hours on a first in, first out principle to a freezing chamber kept at -12 degrees Celsius. The packaged product should be stored away from direct light. All packaging processes should be done indoors, adequately separated from other activities in a manner that precludes contamination. This is just an illustration of one factory, again Roosters, where to the left you can see the blast freezing process, the blast freezing chamber. This is done very quickly. Within half an hour, short space of time, the liquid becomes frozen, and it is then transferred and packed into boxes for export. This is within a 40-foot container. Next. Containers for waste that are kept in the processing area should be clean and leak-proof, constructed of metal or other suitable impervious material, easily cleaned, and able to close and be kept closed when not receiving waste. Next. Waste should be removed from the processing area as quickly as possible, but within a maximum of 8 hours of processing, and should be disposed of in accordance with local legislation or regulatory requirements. Waste management becomes important after that. Equipment and utensils used for waste should be clearly identified. Adequate drainage should be present in the processing and sanitary facilities to avoid the risk of contaminating the coconut water. Drains should be cleaned periodically to prevent buildup of biofilms that may contain pathogenic microorganisms. There should be no standing water in the food establishment or on the grounds. Constant sweeping away of water is important. In general, the food establishment should meet the requirements of the competent authority. Filtered coconut water should be cooled and stored as per clause 10 immediately after collection. The facility should employ the first in, first out principle. The flow of product within the facility should maintain a forward progression from raw material to coconut water packaging to avoid cross-contamination. You can see clause 9 of the specification for date coding with regards to finished products. Packaged coconut water should be transported at the maximum temperature of 4 degrees Celsius under such conditions as to preclude the contamination or deterioration of the product. Vehicles used to transport finished products should be designed and constructed so that they can effectively maintain the temperature and other conditions necessary to protect food from harmful or undesirable microbial growth and deterioration likely to render it unsuitable for consumption, and allow for any necessary temperature checks. Personal hygiene. This should be in accordance with the Code of Practice 5 and other relevant national public health regulations to maintain an appropriate degree of personal cleanliness and operate in an appropriate manner. Control of quality control, documentation, record keeping. There should be permanent, legible, and dated records of pertinent production and storage details should be kept, and they should be kept for each lot or batch. Records should be retained for a period in accordance with national requirements or for at least 1 year to facilitate recalls and foodborne illness investigations. Information should include use of agricultural chemicals, date and time of harvest of each lot of coconuts, date and time of processing, volume of production, and storage condition. The product should be tested by accredited laboratories or government-approved laboratories for those parameters specified in CRS 3. All records should be maintained. Representative samples of quality assurance purpose should be kept for at least 7 days under the storage conditions as outlined in clause 12 of the Code of Practice. All refrigerated holding areas should be equipped with a thermometer or temperature recording device. Should there be an authoritative reason to recall packaged natural coconut water, reference to appropriate records of production, processing, packaging, storage, and distribution will be essential in identifying the source of contamination in the coconut water value chain to facilitate product recalls. There should be an established system for traceability from growers through processors to distributors. Detailed records should be kept that will link each supplier of the product with the immediate subsequent recipient of the product through the food chain. The system for traceability and recall should be evaluated annually for effectiveness. Pesticides approved for use. Pesticides should only be used as stated on the label and only used if approved by the national competent authority. Baits should be applied in a manner which preclude them coming in contact with food or food contact surfaces. These types of pesticides would include fumigants, spraying compounds for indoor use, spraying compounds for outdoor use. I wouldn't go through the list, you can see those details after. Baits for rodenticides and others. Next. Well, we can skip the bibliography except to know that Mr. Gordon Dr. Gordon is noted there. And that brings us to the end. I'd just like to comment on this image of the coconut cards for street vendors. Kenny, you were asking how this standard would impact on the street vendors. I think this is something that should be introduced into the wider Caribbean. They originated in Brazil. They were adopted in Mexico, in India, and I saw recently in Ghana. This goes a long way towards keeping the standards for packaged natural coconut water. I can tell you from personal experience because I started off with something of this sort. It's all stainless steel equipment mainly for the punching and the handling of the product. With that, I say thank you, and I wish you the best in your respective countries in adhering to these standards? Over to you, Tristan. Kenny? Kenny, are you there?
It seems Mr. Daniel is having some challenges. Ah, there he is. Mr. Daniel?
Okay. I'm saying that once we adopt the standards, we definitely have to look at policing the standards, and if the cooperative in place, I think it makes life easier for the Bureau of Standards or whoever is supposed to be policing the standards. I know public health, Bureau of Standards, we are all working together on the NSP, and definitely we hope that coming out of this webinar today, we will definitely intensify the effort to get things in place and ensure that the roadside vendors are not pushed aside, but we will include them, incorporate them into the cooperative and get them to realize that they have more time for themselves and still make the same amount of money and even more. All right. I notice that our time is fast approaching, and I probably would like to invite some of the people who had questions. Tristan, you had some follow-up here?
Yes, so if I may just relay some of the questions that have been posted on the 10X platform. Let me highlight first a question from Ms. Richelin. She's asking whether or not that coconut, well, she's seeing that coconut water is packaged in various packages and is asking, is there an ideal type of package for coconut water?
Well, the common one is, if I may, Kenny, the common packaging material that we use is the PET, polyethylene packaging material, polyethylene terephthalate, sorry. Now, this itself is coming under scrutiny from an environmental perspective. And what is desirable, most desirable, is if we can recycle the waste of the coconut fiber, convert that to cardboard, and then arrive at a point where we can use that for packaging of coconut water. The challenges, the technological challenges are great. I concur, I agree, but I think it is not beyond us in the Caribbean.
I think I just saw yesterday some paper packaging with using paper. And I think it was in Florida, there was some session that was ongoing, and one of our guys put in the session, and then he communicated that he can use paper, Tetra Pak kind of thing, you know. So as soon as I get some more information, I'll be passing it on to the group. But another thing that we were looking at is getting up single-use plastics and getting into the containers that are now available at the different wholesale places where you can buy a container for your water, and then that we can probably use for coconut water and then continue to wash it and then come back next morning. Then you can get a drop in the price to the consumer, and also the cost of production will be lowered to the vendor or the company. So these are some of the things that we can look at. And I know that our Jeff project in St. Lucia is waiting for us to come to some understanding and getting approval for the use of to banning the use of single-use plastics, the PET bottles.
Okay, Chair, just to go through another one of the questions that would have been posted. We have a question from Mr. Christopher Chinapu asking, what are some of the regulatory practices under consideration to prevent carbonated beverages being presented as coconut water. I know in one of the webinars presented yesterday through IICA, touched on the issue of food fraud, which this could also fall into. And they're asking whether or not can a little more on the bottling requirements be shared, and is a specific color suggested?
I don't know, Raymond, do you have any ideas on this one?
I can probably speak to that one. The standard speaks, this particular standard speaks specifically to packaged natural coconut water. So you're not, this product is just that, natural coconut water. If you're going to add carbonation to the product, you are now changing the identity of the product. It's no longer natural coconut water because you've carbonated it. You are now creating a carbonated beverage. So then the product will have to be designated as a carbonated beverage and not as natural coconut water. So it would be dealt with based on the standard of identity, because carbonation is not a natural thing for the coconut water.
Thank you, Cheryl.
And Chair, if I may, there was an example in Trinidad and Tobago where there was a product presented to the public as coconut water, and they had to address the fact that it was labeled as coconut water when indeed it was a carbonated beverage. So there was some regulatory intervention from that point of view, using that as an example and case study for Trinidad and Tobago. Just to quickly get in some of the questions, I know we are a bit strapped for time, and Chair, I want to suggest, if it is, we could extend the webinar just beyond 11 o'clock to 11:15 and have the other event start at 11:30. So I will speak with the organizers on my end. But just to highlight another question, this one is from Brandon. He's asking, what has been the uptake of the cross-view coconut industry standards? What has it been like in the member states? And is there any case of non-compliance? And if so, what are the measures that are being taken to address non-compliance?
Okay, Philippa, I'm sure Philippa will address this one. Yeah, Philippa, are you with us?
Well, since we are thinking for time, I can speak to that one. The standard would have just been published, so they would not have been adopted in the member states as yet. However, I suspect because the standard, when we were at the voting stage, we didn't have any pushback. So I would like to think the fact that, well, it was at the stage of voting that we had signed on for it, that therefore when it gets to the part where it gets to the point of member states accepting it, then we shouldn't have any challenges there. So we haven't moved to the stage where we have implemented it, so as to know whether or not there are any pushback set us.
Okay, thank you very much, Cheryl.
What me know so far. So what I know is basically you have West Rural.
Can you speak up a bit, Richard? We're not hearing you clearly.
Compass up there, so East Rural come down to it come down to here. So.
Richard, we heard you trying to say something. It was not. Could you repeat?
And then you have Central, which from Ligani area go down to
Or could you put your question in the chat so that we can probably Huh? We're not hearing you clearly at all. I don't know.
I don't know. I never hear them one before. Central, which encompass over, like below, Red Hills side, come grass.
Did anybody make out what he was saying? Or?
Yeah, let me ask Mr. Miles to make a comment. Yeah, to type that comment in the chat so that we could follow it and we would read it out to everyone. And while we are waiting, doing that, let me apologize to the participants on the 10X platform. You would have lost connection for a few minutes. There will be a recording of this event that you could access to see those parts that you may have missed. Just to touch on another question while we are waiting Mr. Miles' comment, let me reference Hajra Medical. With regards to labeling requirements for packaged natural coconut water, should there be an indication of the nutritional information? So this person is asking whether the nutritional information should be reflected as part of the labeling requirements.
I think definitely we must have the nutritional requirements as part of the standard for labeling. And
well, right now there's no legal requirement to declare the nutritional facts on products unless you make a some sort of nutritional based claim. So on that premise, that's why there's no requirement to state the nutritional facts. However, for those of you who have been following the other developments in CROSSQ, we have been working on a standard for the labeling of prepackaged foods and DCRS5. That one is being revised. And once that one does come into effect, there will now be a requirement to have the nutritional facts declared, irrespective of whether or not you make a nutritional based claim. But at this current juncture, there is no legal requirement to make the nutritional facts declarations. But obviously, if the producer wants to put it, there's nothing stopping them from putting it as well. But there's no legal requirement.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl.
Okay, Chair, there is another question, just to get as many in as quickly as possible. Mr. Miles had asked previously, where could one obtain or access this 18-month variety, this 18-month coconut variety that was referenced to in the presentation?
I think it was Ricardo, is he? No.
Well, if I may, Chair, I'm probably the one who should be responding to this because for two reasons. I made the presentation to show the illustration, and secondly, as far as we know, it originates in Suriname, which is where Guyana gets its planting material from, or got its planting material from. It's very, very popular in Guyana. But that kind of question will have to come through, or is best answered maybe through your NSP. Through collaboration among NSPs between Jamaica, Guyana, Suriname, or Jamaica, Suriname. That is the best way to approach that.
Thanks, John.
Thank you for that response. And of course, we are CARDI, IICA, we are co-implementing a regional coconut project, so we will intervene as well and identify where all the different varieties could be made accessible from. So we will also play a supporting role to that effect. We have another question from Janet Lawrence asking, what is the laboratory capacity across the region to conduct the required tests? As presented in one of the presentations, you would have seen that there are a number of tests that need to be conducted in terms of meeting the standard. So what are the laboratory capacity across the region to conduct these required tests?
I think
I guess I am not certain as to whether an assessment was actually done to see what is the lab capacity of the different member states. However, the tests that are required are relatively basic ones, because we are checking for the pH, we're checking bricks or the total soluble solids. We're doing microbiological testing, so we're checking for the total aerobic pig count, total coliforms, E. coli, yeast and mold, staph, Salmonella, Listeria, and then we're doing the metals. So I would suspect that most of the laboratories would have the capacity to do the testing, but I am not aware whether or not an assessment was done to see whether or not the capacity did in fact exist. There was also a question about the adulteration of the product, and the only clause where it would have been addressed in the standard is at clause 6, where we spoke to food additives, where we made where it stated that no natural or artificial substance or ingredient shall be added to the coconut water to enhance its quality or preservation. Chemicals present in the product shall only be those which are there as a result of the natural development of the fruit while on the tree. So it is disallowed as to whether what test would be done to make sure. I guess we just be checking to make sure that there are no preservatives added, and there is no enzyme action, because I know you can, in some jurisdictions, you can add like stuff to take care of the enzyme action, so that you reduce the color changing and those type of reactions, but we didn't stipulate those tests in the standard.
Just to add to the first part of the question, I'm sure we have a agricultural diagnostic facility that's just commissioned, and we should be in a position to assess the processes in St. Lucia and probably through the region if the needs arise. So that is available, and then we have the facility staffed now, so it's just a matter of letting you know.
The equipment.
Yeah, get the equipment and all those kinds of things. Some equipment is there already, and we're going through a few challenges, but then we should be in a position to assist with the testing of the coconut water.
Chair, we have 5 minutes left before this session will automatically end. As such, let me just highlight one more question, and perhaps we could proceed to wrap up with your blessing. This question comes from Rose Hines. In terms of the subcommittees, are these formulated in each member country, which feeds information into the regional committee? I know Ms. O'Connor had to step away, but she provided a response stating that subcommittees are formed by CROSQ. However, each member country should establish a national mirror committee that will feed the information to the Rtsc or the Rtc. I'm not sure if Ms. Lewis wants to add any additional information.
No, just to say that is the procedure where you would make sure at the national level that you engage with your national stakeholders to make sure that their voice is heard. So you would have what we call our national mirror committee, and that should be made up of the stakeholders, if not individual ones, the actual agencies. So you might have like a cooperative or so. So you try to get as many persons in so that their voice can be heard. So they are well aware of the developments well before the standard reaches the final draft stage.
I think you're very correct, because I think each island has a committee, or they review the standards through the Bureau of Standards, and they go through all that and make the comments and send it through. So I think you're on point there, Sharon.
Chair, if we may move to close proceedings.
Okay, let me just first of all thank everybody for participating in this very interesting webinar today. I think I'm happy to know that the standard has been approved. The next stage, I'll probably have to discuss it with our Bureau of Standards. I guess you can touch base with this Bureau of Standards in your country and see what is really happening to the standard. In St. Lucia, I think we will have to look at policing the standard as one of the ways that we can probably tackle this problem that we have on the roadside, and even probably with the processors, because everybody is jumping into the coconut business now, having been torpedoed by the COVID-19. So we have a drive, a very big drive into the coconut sector. I call it the crop of the future, the coconuts. And we would really like to see ourselves going further, working as a team with the regional bodies, and then making use of the market we have right at our doorsteps in the US and even in Europe. I would like to thank Tristan for giving me the opportunity to chair this meeting. I'd like to thank the presenters for their contribution. I see Cheryl smiling. And it's a pity that Mr. Trotz and Raymond is here. We definitely would like to do it again and make sure that this is like the beginning of things to happen and to take the industry to the higher heights. Thank you again for being part of this webinar, and we look forward to seeing you at some of the sessions in the future. All right. Thank you, Tristan.
Thank you everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks as well, and it was a pleasure. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you everybody.
And all the best to the industry.